Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. So today's video is going to be something pretty casual. I'm kind of in the mood to take a break from one of my current projects and work on a simple 1950s dress. So the pattern I'm going to be following today is number 935, and this is from the New York Pattern Company, and it is a pattern from probably the late 1950s. And I was drawn to this pattern because of the silhouette. I really like that it isn't a super full skirt, but it still has that flattering nipped-in waist appearance. I find full skirts a little bit difficult to manage on a regular basis, especially if they need petticoats to fill them out to make them look good. So something like this in this silhouette, even though I don't like it as much, I like it for practicality reasons within my wardrobe. So I thought this would be a really good everyday dress pattern, and it was relatively inexpensive too. It is in size 16, so it is made for 34-inch bust. This dress pattern also has relatively wide straps, and then it has a little notch at the top of the neckline to make it a little bit more interesting, and it has these really big pockets. And I've actually already made the pockets. They're like the best thing I've made this year. Look at them! People are probably going to hate the fabric combination I've decided on for this dress, but I have a really amazing fish floral fabric that I'm going to use for the bulk of it, and then I decided to do contrasting pockets made out of this orange and white striped sateen, and I fussy cut out some of the fish from the main fabric and fused them using double-sided fusible interfacing onto the pockets, and then I just embroidered around them so the edges won't fray, and I fray checked it as well. And then I also sewed on some of these little acrylic stars. So I think these are just amazing. It's definitely not going to be a subtle, understated, classic design of dress, despite the relatively classic pattern that I'm using, but I think it's going to be really cute. I think it's going to be really fun to make. Usually for these videos, I show you the mock-up making process, but I don't have a lot of time to work on this right now, so I think I'm just going to set you up over there-ish and then speed up the mock-up process, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. And I'll document assembling the actual dress in a little bit more detail. But before getting started, I do want to show you the main fabric because it is so fun and I love it so much. It is currently being stored in the pile of fabric, and if you have an actual pile of fabric in your room, then you probably own too much fabric. But I'm not getting rid of fabric, so I'm just gonna deal. This is the material in question. So I will put the name of it on screen as well as in the description box, but it is a Tokyo Milk design from the Neptune and the Mermaids collection, and they have a bunch of other really cool fabrics in this collection as well. I purchased one of them, and it has octopus on it, but this one is by far my favorite. So it has this buttercream colored background and then these outlined almost inkwork-like flowers with these more artistically drawn and realistic looking mermaids and fish. I just think it's a really cool combination of materials, and from a distance that looks really over the top, it just looks like a typical busy floral print, and then you get up close and you're like, what the heck is going on? I think prints like that are really, really fun, and I'm really excited to finally have an idea in mind for this that I can use it for. I was originally going to use it for a very full skirt, but as I said in the intro, I don't wear very full skirts very often because I find them kind of cumbersome on a daily basis. So I'm hoping this will look good with the pattern I've selected, and I can end up with a really nice, obnoxious, but wearable dress. And then those are the pockets alongside the fabric. I know like 90% of you are going to hate this combination, but I think it's really cute and fun, so I'm just going to go ahead and work with it. So I just finished the mock-up and I added the facing to it. I didn't turn the straps the right way out and I didn't do any finishing work on it, as per usual with me and mock-ups, but I did follow their instructions. The instructions are incredibly straightforward on this. I'm actually really pretty impressed by them. They're very, very nice. And I followed the pattern as well, as you probably saw little bits and pieces of. Something I did discover is that there are two back-facing pattern pieces here that are absolutely identical in everything except for the color. This one's more faded, so that's kind of interesting. I ended up cutting them both out, but I obviously only needed one. And then this pattern also came with a little bonus pattern piece, which really confused me until I realized that it was marked with a letter instead of a number, which means it doesn't belong to this pattern. So I'll probably just end up throwing that out, but it always makes me sad when I get a pattern that has a bonus piece because it means it's missing from another vintage pattern, and someone is probably pretty upset about that. Anyway, I'm going to try this on. As I said, I'm really impressed with how this went together, and I hope it fits me nicely. My thought on this pattern is that it's very generously sized in the bust. So I purchased a size 34, and I have a 36-inch bust, so I usually better fit a size 36. However, it's kind of flexible, and these patterns do usually run a little bit large, so I'm perfectly okay buying a size 34 and being aware that I have to grade it up. However, this size 34 has about probably 8 inches of too much fabric in the bust area for me, and it's really loose down here too. So I'm gonna have to make some pretty major alterations to this and probably add a couple darts. And I don't really have time to do that right now. I have to feed my dogs. And I also have another project I'm working on that I need to focus on for the next little bit. So I'm going to come back to this either later tonight or tomorrow and work on fixing this so it fits me a little bit better. And then I can dive right into making the wonderful fishy dress. Just as a fun note, outside of this project, I'm working on an Edwardian ensemble, and I've stitched fringe all around each edge, and now I have to stitch on the sequins and seed beads. And I have to do these around the entire edge of the skirt, which is about 4.5 yards of fabric. So each sequin is 6 millimeters, and they need to completely encrust the edge. So you can do the math there, but it's a lot of sequins. It's probably going to take me about 6 hours. So I'm probably going to spend my evening and the very early morning doing that, which is why I can't focus too much on this. But I will come back to it soonish and get this fixed out and figured out. Good morning, everyone. So it is a new day and I'm back to working on this project. I actually have a couple other projects planned for today too, but I thought I would start off and try and make some progress on this one. So it's currently about 9:15 and I think I'm going to work on this until 12 and then I'm going to switch over to something else. So we'll see how much progress I can make in that almost 2-hour time frame. I already did a little bit of work on this pattern. As you will have seen in the previous clip, the mock-up fit me horribly. It was so loose, especially in the bust. It was like it was better suited for a 40-inch bust instead of the 34-inch bust this pattern advertised. I took about 2 inches out of the bust and I'm planning on making further alterations once the bodice is constructed before I end up adding the facing and doing all of the finishing work. I'm going to go ahead and cut out the bodice. I haven't pinned the skirt on just yet because I want to make sure the skirt panels are symmetrical, so it's going to take me a little bit longer to do that. And I also fussy cut out some of the bodice pieces, so I've intentionally laid these on portions of the print that I think are attractive. So now I'm going to cut this out and then I can move on to the skirt. So if you're wondering why I didn't squish these together on the fabric, it's because of the fussy cutting it out, wanting to have specific parts of the pattern placed in specific points of the dress. I was a little worried that I wouldn't have enough fabric to fuzzy cut it, but I have plenty of material for this. So I do need to make sure that the skirt panels are going to be long enough for me because I didn't make a mock-up for them. So I'm not sure how well those will suit me. And I've been thinking about the closures on this dress, and I think I'm going to do up the sides with a couple buttonholes just because I like that better than a placket. I think it looks nicer. And yeah, I think that would suit the cartoonish quality of this dress really nicely too. I might add an inch to the hem of these, and I think I'm going to add an inch to the sides too, just in case the hips end up being tight on me. So that's the back panel. I'm going to cut out the front panel first, just so I can get the design perfect on this one, since it's what you're going to see and it matters a little bit more to me. So once I have one piece cut out exactly how I want, I remove the pattern and I use that piece as a guide for cutting the second piece. So that way I can really nicely and really easily line up the print to be identical. And this is easier with stripes or something, a simpler print, but it works for something like this too. So I'm going to line up the edges first, but also make sure that things on the interior of the panel line up too. So like things like this mermaid's head, I can make sure that those line up. I just realized one of the fish I worked so hard to get lined up is probably going to be cut off when I hem it. Oh well. So that's something that you want to keep in mind when you're doing this, is where the seam allowances are going to be. So like you wouldn't want to position a fish's head right here because then that's going to get cut off when you stitch the pieces together. That's pretty much perfect. Everything's lined up really nicely. So I can go ahead and cut it out. And I do this whenever I'm cutting stripes or plaids or like literally anything. And I'm actually going to go right ahead and pin these together. And when I'm pinning these together, I'm going to make sure that each pin goes through the same point on the print. So if one pin on this side of the fabric is going through the top edge of a flower, then I want it to be at the same point on the underside of the fabric. Or on the other piece of material, I guess. And if you want to be extra careful, you can go ahead and baste this too. Sometimes I'll do that, especially if it's stripes or a simpler print where if it's ever so slightly off, it's going to really detract from the garment. Okay, so I'm just going to sew this quickly off camera, and then I will come back and open it up and we'll see if I did it perfectly. So now I just check the design and make sure that everything lines up nicely. And I think it's pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. Now we shall repeat this with the back panels. And you might be wondering why I didn't just decide to cut this on the fold and have the print going straight across the body. And that's because I just felt like that would look, I don't know, not awkward, but I didn't think it would look as interesting as what I'm doing with it. This has the print kind of level with the hem, so even though it's on an angle down the center front, it kind of moves in the same direction as the skirt without distorting the pattern. So I really like that, and I think that's a nice little detail. A print like this can also look very tacky and very cheap, and I think some level of fabric manipulation can help make it look a little bit, not necessarily more expensive, but when you show clear effort into a garment, I think that does help class it up a little bit, I guess. And I know sometimes with busy prints, it's very easy to just do the easy thing and to not do a lot with it. And sometimes that's the best thing to do, but other times I do think that playing around with it can lead to a more interesting garment, more expensive looking garment, and a garment that showcases the print better than something really simple might. I know a lot of people are telling me just to make a rectangle skirt with this fabric, and that's a perfectly fine idea, and I could have done that, and I think it would have looked really good. That seemed very uninspiring to me, and I feel quite sad doing that with fabric that I find so interesting and inspiring. So I encourage you, if you do buy prints, to play around with them and see if you can make them even more delightful by investing a little bit more effort into cutting your pattern out and into manipulating the material. Now I'm going to sew these panels together as well. I ended up pinning the pockets onto the front panels of the skirt. I forgot to mark the placements for these, so it was a little bit tricky figuring out where they should go. And then I ended up moving the placement of them a little bit because I didn't like where they were supposed to go. But I did get that done. I also sewed up the back seam, so that looks like that. I really like the kind of kaleidoscope effect that this has given me. I think it's really trippy and works well with this design. So I'm happy that I decided to play with it a little bit. And I also cut out the back panel from some scraps that I had left over from the skirt. So now everything I need for this project is cut out except for the belt and things to do with the pocket, which I will deal with later. So I'm kind of going to follow their instructions, but I'm also going to do them rapid fire. So instead of doing these one step at a time, I'm going to do a whole bunch of pinning and then a whole bunch of sewing. So I'm going to add the darts to the back panel, though I still need to mark those. I'm also going to sew up the front panels, which are over here. I'm going to sew the straps into tubes and then turn them right side out so the edges are finished. And the strap piece is right here. I'm probably going to pin them onto the bodice and do a fitting to see how it fits, and then potentially make more alterations to the bust of the bodice before sewing on the facing and finalizing the strap placement. But I will sew together the facing just so I have that ready to go, and I will also fold the bottom edge inward and tack it down so that edge is nicely finished on the final garment. So the facings are up there, straps here, back panels here, front panels here, pockets and stuff over there-ish. So I'm going to go ahead and do a whole bunch of pinning on this. I just goofed up. I ended up unfolding the bodice panel and I realized that I did not cut it to be symmetrical. So notice how much more fish there's on this side than this side, and how the point of this is not perfectly lined up. So I ended up having just enough material to recut it. So now this panel is symmetrical. Unfortunately, since I cut these panels out at the same time as this panel, these aren't symmetrical either. And I don't have enough fabric to recut that. But it doesn't bother me as much, and they are quite similar. It's really just how far over the fish go. So it's okay, it's just not ideal. Now the reason this happened is because I wasn't nearly as careful cutting out the bodice as I was when I was cutting out the skirt. So what I should have done is I should have folded the material and done the pin thing on the fold and made sure that every point lined up perfectly on both sides of the material. If I'd done that, I would have figured out that it was askew, and I would have been able to fix this before cutting anything and forcing myself to recut things. So it's just I don't know, a good reminder that you should always be careful and you should always trust the process instead of just assuming that the fabric is lined up well enough to be good enough for whatever you're making. Okay, so I just finished doing a whole bunch of sewing. I got the facing assembled and I got the bottom edge finished. I also sewed darts into the back panel. I sewed up the straps. I sewed the bodice panels together, and I'm really annoyed by how much this doesn't line up, but I looked through all my fabric scraps and I can't recut that piece, so I'm dealing with it, but I like how this side looks a lot more. And I also sewed the pockets on, but that's like 2 feet away and I'm not going to walk that far. So now I'm going to turn these straps the right way out, and then I will sew the side seams for the bodice and sew the straps on and sew the facing in, and hopefully I can get the bodice together before I run out of time. It is currently, I think, 11:38, 11:39. So I've got 20 minutes to get the bodice together, which should be plenty of time, but those are kind of famous last words, aren't they? But first I have to turn these tubes the right way out, so wish me luck with that. They're not really long enough for me to use my usual method, but I feel like my usual method might be faster. Actually, these are pretty easy to turn right way out. I'm going to use the all-important technique of flinging it around. Those are my straps. Before sewing them on, I have to sew these panels together, and I'm leaving the left side open, kind of below, I didn't actually mark it, but below like that point, we'll say. Now, with the right sides facing each other, I'm going to sew the facing in. Oh, actually, I have to sew the straps on first. I almost forgot. I'm placing the straps right next to the seam of the bodice. Time to sew that on. So I have 10 minutes left before the clock hits 12, but I think I'm going to leave this here for now. I went ahead and sewed the facing in as well as the straps on, and I sewed the straps on at the same time as the facing. It's really clever how they have it laid out on the pattern instructions, so I chose to follow that idea, and it worked out really well. So I've just pinned the top edge of the facing inward so I can see the neckline properly. It says to tack the facing at the seams, but I don't find that does a good enough job, so I'm probably going to slip stitch the facing around the entire edge of the bodice, since this fabric is thick enough and densely printed enough to hide those stitches and any little puckers that they leave behind. But first I'm going to try this bodice on and hopefully it will fit. Alright, so this is the first fitting of the bodice, and it's not great. It's definitely better than the mock-up was, but there's still just a lot of fabric everywhere. So I'm probably going to end up taking it in from here down to help get that really fitted effect. And I think that would make it feel more comfortable and more supportive too. But I'm not going to make any of those alterations until I have the closures in and the skirt on. And the reason I want to wait until the skirt is on because it's going to set the waist placement, and it's also going to weigh the bodice down slightly, and that can alter the fit of something pretty dramatically. So I want to see what that does before I make any major changes. And I also want to wait until I have the closures in because that's going to give me the finalization of the bodice fitting, whereas right now I just have it pinned. So I'm going to do alterations on this bodice, but I'm going to do them after doing everything else. But I do like the placement of the print. I think it's really cute. I like how the goldfish kind of spread out from the V right here. It's just a really cute design. I'm really excited to see how it comes together. It's much later in the day now, and I've made a little bit of progress on this. I'm not saying that I forgot I was filming this project, but all of my other projects today have gone really horribly, so I kind of forgot I was supposed to be filming this project. I was interrupted with a little pumpkin. Basically what I was saying is that I did up the side seams, except for the top 8 or so inches of the left seam, since that's going to be undone to create the placket. Then I sewed the waist seam, and I sewed it originally as a 1/2 inch allowance, but it was a little low on the waist and it wasn't super comfortable. So I ended up putting another line of stitching 1/4 inch below that, and then I just finished the raw edge with lace binding. So that's where I am in terms of construction for this project. I also marked the buttonholes onto the side of the front panel. So I decided to do this instead of snaps or hooks since I just think it looks a little bit nicer. So there are going to be 5 buttons up the side, and I'm going to sew them as bound buttonholes. So I've cut out the little lining pieces for them. I've also cut out the modesty panel sort of portion of the placket, which is going to serve as a base for the buttons, and I've cut out the binding, which is going to cover the raw edges for the buttonholes. And then over here are my button options, but I've decided on these ones, and I have these in orange too, so I'm not sure which color I'm going to use, but I'm definitely going to use this size. So now I shall pin these onto the front side of the buttonhole things and get these sewn. I'm happy to report that I just finished sewing the buttonholes and also sewed the buttonholes on. I actually sewed the buttons with the facing the wrong way out. So instead of doing bound buttonholes, I turned the buttonhole completely inward, and then I ended up using 2 pieces of materials to create the inner portion. So it doesn't look quite as pretty, but they look good enough and they're hidden at the underarm, so I think it's okay. There are 5 buttons down the side, and then there is a hook and bar right at the waist just to keep that secure. And now I'm going to try this on. Probably going to try it on properly, and then I'm going to try it on inside out so I can make the alterations to the bust, which I mentioned a couple of video clips ago. So here is the dress when worn. It fits pretty well, but it definitely needs to be taken in at the underbust just so I feel a little bit more secure. I'm also just using this belt as a placeholder. It does have instructions for making your own belt, but I think I might try and order a orange belt if I can. I really prefer leather belts to fabric belts because they hold their shape more, and I just think they end up looking nicer. So we'll see if I can find one online in my size that's affordable. Otherwise, I will make one to match this dress. But I think it looks pretty cute so far. I just need to hem it and then make those minor bust alterations that I mentioned. I'll get it closer so you can see some of the details. And then that is the button placket down the side. I just finished stitching the hem, and I ended up sewing it as a 3.5 inch wide hem. So I turned the bottom edge inward by a 1/2 inch using my iron, and then I turned it inward by 3 inches, and I stitched that down with whip stitches. So it's a very nice hem with no visible stitches from the exterior. In fact, I don't think there's any visible top stitching on this dress except for the stitching around the pockets. And yeah, now this dress is complete. It ended up taking me 2 days due to some setbacks, but there's probably only 6 hours of time really invested into this project, and I could definitely make it faster if I made it in the future. I really enjoyed making this little dress. I haven't felt too well today, so that's why I didn't film as much of the button process as well as the hemming process, but I'm very happy to have this dress complete, and I think it looks really cute. I love doing the little pocket detailing and matching up the prints. I think it's fun when you can take a relatively simple design and put a little twist on it using a fun fabric. So I hope you enjoyed watching me make this, and maybe it will inspire you to look a little bit closer at some quilting cottons out there. I know I'd love to use more of them in the future. As I said, I have another fabric from this collection that I'd really like to make something out of. In fact, that's the fabric. So it has flowers and octopus on it. So if you'd like to see me make a dress out of that, or make something else out of that, a mystery garment of sorts, then definitely subscribe. And if you'd like to see me make more things in general, then that's another good reason to subscribe. So I hope you'll consider doing that and leave this video a like and a comment if you enjoyed it. And now I'm probably going to split to some sort of outro of me wearing the dress so you can see it a little bit in action. And I'm sure I will be a little bit perkier then and perhaps have nicer words to end this video with. So Cut to that, but thank you for watching. I don't actually have a lot more to say about this dress, but I've worn it a few times now and I really like it. It's comfortable and flattering and looks nice on its own as well as over other pieces, like the striped sateen shirt which I made in a previous video. I ended up pairing it with that navy belt and a pair of shoes from Royal Vintage. Though I was highly tempted to buy bright orange sparkly shoes to go with it from a regular choice, I managed to restrain myself. I did have to alter the straps on this dress to make it fit more securely in the bust, and I'll probably replace the buttons with shank buttons just because they do try and undo themselves. But those are minor alterations, and I really love the playfulness of this dress, and I look forward to making more like it. If you want to see those future pieces, then you can subscribe, and if you enjoyed this video, then giving it a like and a comment really helps me out. Thanks again for watching, and I shall talk to all of you very soon. Jumping on at the end here because I wanted to give a thank you to all of my lovely patrons. I really, really appreciate the ongoing support, and I'm so excited for what I have to come over the next couple of months. And I wanted to give a special shout out to Jordan Carpenter, Heidi Nizer, Jennifer Pingleton, Tabitha Langston, Dot Cosplay, Mo Quintana, Rachel Bishop, Sharon Cyrus, Janet Abbott, and Christina Lott. I really, really appreciate the support, more than I can even possibly say, and as I said, I have a lot to come that I'm really looking forward to. I also just wanted to say that I was recently in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I picked up some really fun prints, so I think more videos like this will be happening in the future if you're interested in seeing them. Also, if you are someone who does a lot of browsing for fabric online, and you come across a really unique, weird print that you think I'd like and you'd like to see me work with, then leave a link to it down below because I would love to see it. I was really surprised how much I struggled finding prints that were weird enough for me to be interested in making something out of them, so any suggestions are absolutely welcome. And thank you again for watching and hopefully enjoying, and I will talk to all of you very soon.